Despite its growing status as a global economic powerhouse, India faces a shocking paradox. Millions are trapped in a cycle of deprivation. How did a nation with immense potential fall prey to such dire economic challenges? China continues to grow economically and soon will surpass America. But how come India hasn't progressed for decades? Around 370 million people in India are multidimensionally poor. This means that beyond just income, they lack access to essential services and opportunities. As of recent estimates, approximately 7% of India's population lives below the poverty line. The main reason why India is still poor is colonial legacy. The period of British rule in India, which lasted for nearly 2 centuries, had a profound effect on the country's economic development. The British exploited India's resources, which led to a significant decline in local industries. The British established a system that prioritized the extraction of raw materials for their own industries back in England. For example, India was rich in valuable commodities like cotton and minerals. Instead of developing these resources to benefit the local population, the British focused on exporting them to fuel their industrial revolution. This exploitation not only stripped India of its wealth, but also hindered the development of local industries that could have provided jobs and boosted the economy. As the British expanded their control over India, they also deindustrialized its economy. Prior to the British rule, India had a thriving textile industry and was known for its skilled artisans. But the British introduced machine-made textiles from England, which were cheaper and of higher quality than Indian products. This led to a decline in the local textile industry and pushed many Indian workers out of job. British colonial policies imposed heavy taxes on Indian farmers and industries, making it difficult for them to sustain their livelihoods. The tax system was designed to extract wealth from India and send it to England. As a result, many farmers found it impossible to make a living, leading to lack of financial security, pushed many families into debt, causing them to lose their land and fall into deeper poverty. One of the most tragic consequences of British colonial rule was the occurrence of famines, with the Great Bengal Famine of 1943 being one of the most devastating. The British government failed to take adequate measures to prevent the famine or provide relief to those affected. Instead, they prioritized exporting food from India to support the war effort during World War II. The legacy of British colonial rule continues to affect India today. The economic exploitation, deindustrialization, and neglect during famines contributed to long-term poverty and underdevelopment in many regions. While India has made significant strides in economic growth since gaining independence in 1947, the shadows of its colonial past still linger. Many regions still struggle with poverty, and the challenges of building a self-sustaining economy remain. After India gained independence in 1947, the country faced monumental challenge of rebuilding its economy. The government aimed to create a system that could balance social equality with economic growth. To achieve this, India adopted a mixed economy model, which combined elements of both capitalism and socialism. While this approach was designed to address deep-rooted inequalities, it led to inefficiencies and bureaucratic obstacles that hampered progress. In a mixed economy, both the public and private sectors coexist. The Indian government believed that state intervention was essential to promote development and ensure that resources were distributed fairly. As a result, the government established many public sector enterprises, particularly in key industries such as steel, coal, and telecommunications. These enterprises were meant to safeguard national interests and provide essential services to the population. The idea was that the government could direct economic activities to help improve the lives of ordinary people, especially those living in poverty. Despite the government's good intentions, the mixed economy model had many problems. One major issue was the inefficiency that arose from excessive government control. The bureaucratic processes required for businesses to operate were lengthy and complicated. Entrepreneurs had to navigate a maze of regulations and red tape, which slowed down decision making and hindered productivity. Instead of focusing on innovation and growth, businesses found themselves spending valuable time and resources dealing with government requirements. Furthermore, the extensive state intervention failed to adequately address the country's economic inequalities. Although the government aimed to reduce poverty and promote social welfare, the benefits of economic growth were not evenly distributed. Urban areas and certain industries saw significant development, while rural areas and agriculture continued to lag behind. This imbalance further entrenched social disparities, leaving many people still struggle to meet their basic needs. Another critical aspect of India's post-independence economic policy was the license Raj system. Under this system, businesses were required to obtain government permits to operate. This framework was intended to regulate the economy and ensure that industries were developed in a controlled manner. But the reality was that the license Raj created numerous obstacles for entrepreneurs. The process for obtaining licenses was time-consuming and fraught with uncertainty. As a result, many potential business owners were discouraged from starting new ventures. Furthermore, the license Raj contributed to a culture of corruption. With so many permits required, individuals and businesses often resorted to bribery or other unethical practices to expedite their approvals. This environment of favoritism meant that access to licenses was determined by connections rather than merit. As a result, talented entrepreneurs were sidelined, limiting the overall growth of the economy. In addition to severely impacting India's industries, the agricultural sector is also struggling. Agriculture is the backbone of India's economy, employing a large portion of the population and contributing significantly to the nation's GDP. However, the agricultural sector faces many challenges that threaten its stability and growth. Two major issues are the dependence on monsoons and ineffective land reforms, both of which have deep-rooted impacts on farmers and their livelihoods. For centuries, Indian farmers have relied on the annual rains to cultivate their crops. The monsoons, which typically arrive between June and September, are crucial for providing the necessary water for crops such as rice and wheat. However, in recent years, the unpredictability of monsoon rains has led to severe consequences. Droughts resulting from delayed or inefficient rainfall has led to crop failures, while excessive rainfall caused floods that destroy crops and farmland. The impact of these weather patterns is exacerbated by poor infrastructure in rural areas. Many farmers lack access to adequate irrigation systems, which could help them manage water supply more effectively. Without proper irrigation, farmers are forced to rely solely on the monsoon rains. Additionally, the roads and transportation system in rural areas are inadequate. This lack of infrastructure not only affects farmers, but also the entire country. Another critical issue plaguing Indian agriculture is ineffective land reforms. Despite various attempts at reform, many farmers remain landless or work on small plots of land. under oppressive conditions. Land reforms aimed at redistributing land from wealthy landlords to landless farmers have failed to bring about significant change. In many cases, the land that has been redistributed is not sufficient for farmers to sustain their families. Consequently, many farmers find themselves trapped in a cycle of poverty, unable to invest in their farms or improve their productivity. Another critical issue is education. Many children in India don't have access to well equipped schools or trained teachers, which limits their ability to learn and develop essential skills. The lack of vocational training programs further compounds this issue. Without a strong educational foundation, many Indians struggle to compete for better paying jobs in the job market. And this situation perpetuates a cycle of poverty where the next generation faces the same limitations as their parents. The gap between those with access to quality education and those without continues to widen, leading to social and economic inequalities that are difficult to overcome. Why do you think India is still poor compared to, say, China